Now we welcome Karen to the Speak Out. Karen, will you share your story?
Yes, thank you for having me. And the most important fact about my life that I want people to know is that everything that good has happened in my life can be traced back to being able to get abortion care. I experienced abortion when I was very young, just like Jane Doe. I was a minor. I was 13. I was pressured by an older boy into something that I didn't even understand. And I can remember walking around school. I was getting sick every day, telling everybody, I have a weird germ. And my parents figured out what was happening. They figured out I was pregnant, and they arranged an abortion. We didn't have much discussion about it. I do remember feeling tremendous shame. I remember my father standing over me and me just looking at the ground in shame, and him telling me I must never, ever, for as long as I live, tell anyone that I had an abortion, not even my husband when I was grown. So I just remember feeling overwhelmed with shame at a very early age. And then when I was in college, I got into a relationship with an older boy, and at first he was kind to me, and he gradually became more abusive, and I think I carried shame, and I felt like maybe I deserved this kind of treatment. And I stayed with him. I got pregnant, and he ended up dumping me off at a clinic by myself, alone. So I was experiencing a second abortion. I was 19, and I was still living at home with my parents, and I spent so much time after that in the bottom of my closet crying into a pillow. I've never felt more alone, and that was a long time ago. I'm 58 years old now, and I can look back with such gratitude that I wasn't forced into becoming a parent when I was a teenager. So many good things have happened to me. I was the first in our family to graduate from college. I was able to get jobs I loved, first as a journalist and then as an elementary school teacher's assistant. I married a wonderful man. We've been married for 33 years. We've raised two amazing sons, and I am now a very proud grandmother. And I know that none of those things would have been possible without being able to access abortion care. But there was a huge downside of having abortion care, and that was the silence and the shame. And so, not being able to talk to anybody about it, I just carried this idea, because it's all I heard, that I'm a murderer and a bad person. And because of those shaming messages and not hearing anything compassionate, I lived in fear. Every relationship in my life, I thought, would be destroyed if anybody knew. And so I lived with that shame for a long time. But it changed in my 40s. When I was in my 40s, I met a woman who'd had an unintended pregnancy. She didn't have an abortion. She was sent away. But still, I recognized this is someone who knows what an unintended pregnancy is like. And so I was able to tell her my story, and that set me on a path of self-disclosure that is still continuing to this day. I found the courage to tell my husband. In 2013, I told my two grown sons. It was the most terrifying moment. I thought they might just reject me, but they've turned out to be my most ardent supporters, and in fact, my younger son became a clinic escort. And so that was, all those terrors that I had because of the shame and silence never came into fruition. But now when I hear the news of Jane Doe, and I think of how young she is, and I can remember still those feelings that I felt when I was so young and feeling alone, scared, confused, lost, all those things. And so I'm just heartsick to think how much worse it is for the Jane Does in this world, who are facing shame, and they're in a strange country, they're in detention, so many terrible situations. So I just feel like the attacks are thriving because of the silence. And as somebody famous once said, silence only, it doesn't encourage those who are tormented. It encourages the tormentors if we're silent. So it's not easy to share your story, and I'll admit my heart's pounding right now. It's hard. It's hard to talk about these private, intimate experiences, but it's important. It's important that we do.
Thank you so much for sharing, Karen. And what connections do you see between yourself and the Jane Doe cases?
Well, the main connection I see is the fact that it's so much worse, that I know it's so much worse for the Jane Does in terms of stigma. I mean, the experiences just must be horrendous. And I lived my life facing only abortion stigma. I'm a privileged white woman, and I know, that I've never experienced the kind of stigmas that Jane Doe is experiencing. Not just abortion stigma, but stigmas of race and class and all those things. So it increases my humility and deepens my commitment to be involved, to take action and try to help the situation for people like that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Karen.